Hello, I'm Linda Seith from The Layered Onion. Thank you for joining us. We will be listening to our amazing creators talk about their art and mental health. 48 million artists all over the world share this lived experience. The Layered Onion was formed to create a supportive community, allowing the creators to focus on their art, bringing their work from the shadows to receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. Each podcast will feature an artist who talks about their creations and mental wellness. Art is healing. We hope these discussions will inspire you to appreciate the stories behind the creations and, more importantly, inspire your inner creator. Together, we can tackle the stigma surrounding mental health. So, hello, Brittany. Welcome to the Layered Onion podcast. Very excited to have you here. Maybe you could introduce yourself and talk about all the different genres that you create in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I am an artist and a true Gemini, so I kind of do a little bit of everything when it comes to art. I am wildly creative, which is a blessing and a curse. And so I can get a bit hyperfixated on certain things at certain times. But last year, I actually decided to do one canvas every month. And that resulted in the 4 behind me and some others. So I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about that.
So I'm excited to talk about the art behind you because each piece is very different, but yet they're very cohesive.
Thank you.
As they go together. Did you find that doing a canvas a month actually you found cohesion, or are these 4 that just seem to really work together?
A little bit of both, I'd say. My favorite color is gold. So there's a lot of gold that happens in my work, but I also have always had an affinity for black and white. And it started when I was a youngster. I always really loved black and white, whether it was checkers, whether it was art, and a lot of my work is black and white with gold included. And so these 4 were created at very different times throughout the year and different emotions. But ultimately, these 4 ended up being the same size, the same colors, and they do kind of go together.
Yes. And are they, so what is your primary, is it acrylics? Is it multimedia? Is it all of the above?
Mostly acrylics when it comes to painting. I do really love using items one would not normally use. So making paint out of organic materials like cinnamon, or just exploring with the paint itself. But the ones behind me are acrylic, and the one here, this one here, that was created with acrylic on canvas, and it was I had a strong desire to finger paint. And so those are all my fingerprints, those little dots.
You know, it almost looks like the rocks in a riverbed is almost what I see happening there. So interesting. Yeah. That's one thing I love about art is everybody can look at it and see something completely different. And I think for many people, they have a fear that if they look at art and they say something that might not be what others see or what the artist was thinking, that then their interpretation is wrong.
Right.
And that's, I think, something that takes a long time for people to start to get comfortable. But an area, I know you also teach art. Do you ever have that come up?
Oh, absolutely. People think that they're not good enough or not creative. That's one I love hearing, because we are all so innately creative. We create our coffee in the morning. We create conversations like this. We create energy in spaces. So for me, when I hear that, it's sort of like a challenge of I can't wait to prove you wrong. And I really believe that creativity is not developed, it's lost. And so tapping into that intuition, it's a very intuitive thing of what you see first is best. What you see first or what you want to do first is correct. Meaning, if you see gold paint, I can't help myself. If I see gold paint, I have to do something with it. And that is going to be different for everybody. And that ultimately is why art is so powerful, because whether you're doing it or you're viewing it, your interpretation is correct. And the fact that you see rocks from that painting, that was not what I was trying to do, but it's how you're interpreting it. It's beautiful.
Right, right. And I think that's so, I, like many, would have never said that out loud because I was afraid I was, I might have said, it wasn't really till I painted and I do a lot of abstract, and I realized that what I saw was not what other people saw. And I sometimes like their interpretations better.
It's fun, and I think that's why I gravitate to abstract as well, like you do, because it's so interpretive and it's almost like sharing. It's almost like cooking for somebody. Anyone that wants to look at it is not only allowed, but empowered to interpret it the way that they want to.
So kind of let's go a little bit down that line. What got you into teaching art?
Well, I am a writer for the most part. We met because of my book of poetry initially.
Yes.
So I do have a book of poetry. I published that in 2020 during quarantine, when we were all admittedly, arguably a bit lost. And I found myself in that place, ended up finishing and self-publishing my book. And then that led to connections within my community of other artists and like-minded people. And then last year, a local art studio opened, and it's the first of its kind in our county, and it's right down the street from my house. And because I work from home, I paint and I write, I needed to get out of the house and I needed human interaction. And I also happened to know the manager of that art collective. So just put two and two together, and with those connections was able to start teaching some classes. I actually started with a creative writing class. And then as my painting progressed, my painting started for healing, really. And wow, this is getting so deep so fast. The same year that quarantine happened, I started doing cognitive behavioral therapy. And my therapist recommended art because she saw that creative side of me. And then painting evolved to this insatiable desire to just sort of try it all, because I loved all of it. And that essence of that passion, wanting to share it with others, led to teaching. I think coming from a big family, I've always sort of been a teacher as a big sister. And so it came a little bit naturally, but it's also just something that has helped me so much personally. I want to share that with others. And so I do now teach the creative writing class still. That's my favorite class to teach. And then I also teach an earring making class, which
I know, I love those.
Yeah. This is a special pair. This is an extra special pair. So I taught the class last night, and I was having a rough day yesterday. And it was my mental health. I was having a rough day yesterday. And so I had committed to my class. I had people signed up. And so I went to teach the class, and the sweetest mother-daughter pair came to my class, and she was 11, and she was oozing with creativity, just so wildly creative, abstract thoughts, just, and through the course of the class, there's conversation. And she was telling me how she just feels like she doesn't fit in middle school, and she can't wait until it's over. And she's the kid that sits alone at lunch and reads. And she is me at that age. And it was so relatable, and it was so powerful to be able to tell her, guess what? I was that kid alone at lunch reading, and I found my people. And you're not going to find your people in middle school, and that's okay. But if you can persevere and follow the art, it's never going to steer you wrong. You will find your people. And she made her pair of earrings. They're allowed to make 2 per class. That's usually what time allows. And she made this gorgeous first pair for her grandmother, who she said her grandmother always wears white and has a white aesthetic in her home. So she made these gorgeous crystal quartz and moonstone earrings. Well, then she moves on to her second pair, and she's asking me, what's your favorite color? And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. She made the second pair of earrings and gifted them to me, and that's what these are.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Isn't that the sweetest?
Yes, They're really sweet.
Cool. They're malachite. My hair is kind of, They're malachite, and they're so unique.
Yes.
And I've never seen a pair like them before.
And how powerful that you touched her by saying that you were her, and then she gifted you that. Now you guys will always think of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that goes to the healing power of art.
Right.
And
I was having such a bad day, and it just was completely different. It turned out to be one of the best days of my life.
Yeah. And I think that, like you said earlier, it is so sad that our innate creativity is tamped down. And we're told so often in school, sit still, follow the, draw in the lines. I was never one to draw in the lines. I was always kind of getting chastised a bit for that, being kind of outside the box. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't until I was completely out of school and in the working world that there was some benefit to not being in the lines. But still, I had to tamp down my creativity because, you were kind of in, I'll be blunt, more of a male-driven world where it wasn't rewarded to be creative necessarily.
Yes. It's not rewarded to spend time, 8 hours doing a mural. It's not something that you learn in generalized public education. It's changing a little bit as we recognize the power of things like Montessori education and how important art is. But being able to teach locally, it makes connections like that of kids that may, that day may have a ripple effect. And that's why I love teaching, because I just don't want to keep all the art to myself. There's so much to create, and I want people to just keep creating. We need it. Our world needs it.
Right, absolutely. So I know another class that you teach is botanical painting, and I saw on your Instagram kind of an example of that. But could you explain that a little bit? How you do that with the class?
Sure. Yeah, that class is a crowd pleaser. I've done that class for many different personalities, and what it is it was I was eating a dragon fruit one day, and it got on my shirt. But dragon fruit is a gorgeous color, and so instead of getting upset, I just stained the whole thing on purpose. And then I thought about grass stains and how grass stains are just impossible to get out. But what if you do that on purpose? And that turned into trial and error. And then when I figured out the best process, it is now a class that I teach where I get tea towels. They're kind of like bandanas, just with no print on them. And they're 20 by 20 squares of fabric. and we lay them out on a table. And then we take flowers from the grocery store that they're just going to throw away. I go there every Saturday. They see me coming. They know what I want now. And I take all the flowers they're going to throw away and I take them to the class. And then we use those flowers to, you can use the stems, you can use the leaves, you can use the petals, you could use the whole flower. And you lay that out on the fabric in whatever design you want. And then we put contact paper over all of that to stick it down and keep the petals or whatever in place. And then we use river rocks to roll over the plant material and express the chlorophyll with the pressure of the rocks and your muscles to express the dye naturally. And what you're left with is a really beautiful, almost like Monet watercolor effect on the fabric. And it stays that way. So people have made it into pillows, handkerchiefs, bandanas, but it's really fun and everybody loves doing it. And I'm always impressed with what people come up with.
Well, I love this because literally about a week and a half ago, I was helping my son clean his apartment. He desperately needed it.
You're a good mom.
And I'm going along spraying, and I happen to have on a royal blue lightweight sweater that I really loved, right? And all of a sudden I look down and there is bleach stains.
No.
And I said to him, it was a vinegar kind of like spray. I'm like, did you put bleach in here? And he goes, yeah. So now I need to take that sweater and find a way to do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Take the stain and go with it.
And turn it into art.
Yes, yes. You know, I'd been thinking because I just love that sweater that I got to come up with something.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and
you know, something else I've been really into lately is bleach. And it's a whole other thing, right? You need to wear a mask and make sure you're in a ventilated area. But I took a sweatsuit recently and just on purpose. It started as an accident, right? I was cleaning with the sweatpants on and then I just went for it. And it's so much fun. It also looks cool. But if you can do that with your favorite sweater, I'd love to see the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do something because I love that sweater.
Save the sweater.
Yes, save the sweater.
Yes.
That's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about art from a healing perspective. So you started in 2020 with really pursuing art. Had you done art earlier in your career, or was it always more focused on writing?
My family is very artistic. They're all musicians. And I myself am classically trained in the flute. I still play. I love it.
Okay.
But I gravitated more toward writing. And in high school, had a little girl band back in the early 2000s. And I wrote the lyrics. And then when I graduated high school, I moved out young. And I was more career driven. I needed to support myself. And so I did lose it. I did lose writing for a little bit. I was still journaling, but not writing intentionally. And then COVID happened, and that really changes your perspective on things. And that's a unique experience for anybody existing during that time. And so that's when I finished the book and got into art as a healing modality because I hadn't tried it before, but two, I just knew that it was my personality to be creative and that I had lost that. And perhaps that was why I was struggling a bit more than I needed to. But getting back to the art and trying art that I've never tried before has definitely healed me. And yesterday was a perfect example of that. I woke up and I was not in the right state of mind. And so I ate a nutritious meal, I took a nap, and then I went to the art and I created, and then I went and I taught my class. And my day ended wildly different than it started. And that is healing in action.
So when you thought about first trying art from a healing perspective, did you think about trying to pour out your emotions, or was it more just whatever happened, or kind of talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I think that I had let myself get to a place that I was I went a little too far past, and at the time, at the point that I started to help myself, I was a little numbed out and I was fairly disconnected. And so when I first started the art, it was just in a simple sketchbook. And I started drawing whatever came to mind. And sometimes that was little scribbly, ugly, angry, Sharpie drawings. And sometimes it was graphite, nature, realism drawings. Sometimes it was simply drawing a line after a line after a line after a line, trying to make them all look exactly the same. It was just all very therapeutic, but I was using a book called The Artist's Way, if you're familiar. It's a pretty tried and true, wonderful, wonderful book. But there are a lot of exercises in there for the power of art and healing. And so I was following that. I was also following the advice of my therapist. And then when I sort of emoted enough to regain control and create intentionally, that's when things like these canvases on the wall came to be, or the goal of actually intentionally creating a canvas every month. And then ultimately, it all sort of is, at the end of the day, abstract and expressionist, you could maybe argue, but none of it is exactly the same. And depending on where I'm at or what's available to me will dictate the art that I'm making.
So I actually had a similar experience with a therapist. Started with a scribble journal.
Oh, cool.
Where you just scribbled it, and then you took colored pencils and I would turn it, and then figure out what shape or what was speaking to me. And then you would, she suggested doing at least 5 in a row, and would do them often right before a session. And there was always a pattern. It was very interesting.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, there was always a pattern that even when you were doing it and then coloring, you didn't realize till, you had gone a couple in, and then you're like, oh, for whatever reason, I keep seeing animals, or I see this, or whatever, and I found really, like you, that healing path of going from that to, I tried watercolor. It's too touchy.
Too dainty.
It is. It's too dainty. And ultimately, I just love the bold of acrylic.
Yes.
Myself. The vibrancy. That's
just
who I am. I like vibrant colors. And you said your favorite is gold. Mine is chartreuse.
Ooh, that's a great one.
Yeah, I love chartreuse.
That's the color of my favorite top right now. And they say that colors have their own significance in healing. So just spending time looking at colorful art is healing.
Yeah.
I need to add more color to my art.
But actually, there is something about a neutral palette. In your case, the gold is very vibrant, but that kind of sort of being in the neutral palette, I think, also creates a calm. At least for me, sometimes it makes me feel like, okay, things are wild. If I look, like, if I keep looking at the 4 pieces of art behind you, I have a sense of calm from it, because they just, radiate calm, peace for me.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Well, and sometimes less is more, right? You
Yep,
have a
absolutely.
color palette, or if you're going to a show that just opened for an artist, and there's a very specific theme or an obvious theme. I think the brain has a certain way or a certain expectation, right? Human biases are so natural and they're unavoidable, and they're there to keep us safe. But especially if you're in a healing process of any kind, going to see art that is healing and having it all in that same sort of color palette, I think plays into that human bias and makes you feel a bit safer, even when you're viewing it. And then maybe you can feel safe enough to actually say how you feel about it instead of being afraid to say how you feel about it.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so one thing I guess as you look to the future for your art, what are you, kind of the world is your palette. What do you dream about when you think about the future for your art, teaching, and all of that? What do you think about?
I would love to start doing more public art so that
Yeah.
it's visible to people that wouldn't maybe normally place themselves in a gallery space, or they wouldn't take the time to go to an art show. They just stumble across it maybe on a bike ride or their commute. So I think in the artist community, murals are sort of like the holy grail. And so I would love to get more murals under my belt, and then obviously more public art, but then bringing art to underserved communities, because there are, I live in a rural area, and just having that class last night with the earrings and how creative that child was. She lives in a rural area and there's no art to speak of available at her school. And so doing something, I've long had this dream of maybe getting just the smallest little enclosed trailer, and filling it with art supplies and just taking it to some of those underserved areas and having art classes for them that are totally free, but that they get that feeling of just freedom and creativity and boundless creation. Because when you feel that feeling, you can log it and hold on to it and use it later and try to replicate those experiences in your everyday. It doesn't just have to be when you're holding paint or painting or drawing. And so I would love to do something like that where art is more accessible because we're bringing it to those communities. And then ultimately, I am a huge nature lover. And that's in fact why I live in a rural area, because I need access to the outdoors. And I would love to start a campground where I teach people to camp, because that is a skill and it's really fun, but also it's just art. There's art classes every day. You're creating art all day, every day. And this could be especially beneficial for existing artists. Perhaps they're experiencing creative blocks and they can come have some sort of retreat and be self-sufficient while they're being creative in a way that they haven't before. Like creating a fire hits different than creating a book or creating a canvas. But it's that self-sufficiency and that belief in yourself that I believe causes creative blocks. That insecurity is what causes creative blocks. And so it's all therapy. I have big dreams.
Well, I love that. I love the idea of a trailer with art supplies going to underserved areas. I think that is just amazing. And, I see so many grant opportunities. I think that would be actually a good one for sure. So I'll keep my eyes open.
Thank you. We got to look out for each other, right?
Yes, yeah, I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea, but I too, nature is my spiritual center.
It's your church.
Yeah, it is. And I was just north this weekend, and that
Good for
is,
you.
yeah, that is for me just where I find my center and my peace. And I often feel like, oh, how sad if people have never even experienced that.
Or people that say that they hate camping because they had one bad experience. That's valid. But let's change that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that I think is, I love that idea, actually, this thinking about, what can we do to bring out other people's creativity? And, Chris, it's one of the reasons we brought the Layered Onion together was just this whole idea that art is healing. How do we work together? How do we, make a difference? And we are at a crisis, as you know, with probably that little girl is her self-esteem is probably affected. And, now there's like 50% of those that are under 18 are feeling, depressed, anxious, all of those things. And so much could be different if they had an outlet.
Where they can be safe and they can express instead of repress.
Yeah.
Which I fear is the real challenge.
Oh, middle school. There's no good thing about it. And I think it's great you said to her, because I often ask, what would you tell 11-year-old Brittany? And you got a chance to maybe tell 11-year-old Brittany last night, right?
It felt so serendipitous and almost ironic that the universe would do that. But I needed it. And it was powerful. I felt honored to be in that position of just saying to her, it will get better. And middle school is your present right now, but it is a blink in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, and it's so hard for young people to know that, and of course now 5 years blink in a blink of an eye are gone. It's really incredible. Well, the blink of the eye, our time is gone. And I do have to ask, is the pillow behind you one that you did as well?
I wish.
Oh, I love that.
I know. They are so cool. Yes. Yes, I do. I also, since I've been a child, I've always had a thing for eyes. I'm not sure why, but they're the window to the soul, as they say.
Well, I know you have some on your website, so I wondered if that was yours.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my logo is an eye. So my artist sort of like moniker is
Yeah.
And this is a mosaic that I did recently.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's why I thought, oh, maybe that was yours. So,
yeah. Maybe I'll get into textiles someday.
Oh, well, that would be great. Actually, I just recently talked to Lauren Allen, who's a photographer who does textiles. And their display for their senior thesis was just really a wow.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Use of textiles. So
yeah.
that's a good next step.
There we go.
Yeah. You can start weaving your own yarn.
Hey, stranger things have happened.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again.
Likewise, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to talk with these amazing creators. You can see and read the artist's work in the Shallot, our journal of mental health, art, and literature, or on our website, thelayeredonion.com. Thank you.